This podcast is part of the Blueberry Network at blueberry.com. That's blueberry with no e's.com.
Right on America is brought to you
by a generous grant from the Built on Dreams Media Network and from listeners like you.
Stand by, please. Rolling on 6 now. On 6.
This is Adam Scull. Welcome to another episode of Right on America. Eric Sonnershine was born in New York City and raised outside of Washington, D.C. After graduating from Amherst College with a B.A. in English and a concentration in French and philosophy, Eric served in the Peace Corps in Tunisia, then migrated to New York, where he has lived ever since. At first, Eric made a living at sundry day jobs: cab driver, ESL teacher, salesman, while he wrote songs and performed in a rock band. Later, Eric earned an M.A. in English and taught English composition, English and American literature, and interdisciplinary studies at various universities. Still later, Eric became an advertising copywriter and a medical writer. Throughout Eric's perpetual vicissitudes, there has been one constant. He has been a committed writer of novels, short fiction, essays, journalism, art criticism, poetry, screenplays, and teleplays. Eric's prose has been published in the Village Voice, Newsday, Art News, the Albuquerque Journal, and Art Speak, while his poetry has been printed in Poetry Digest, The Literary Review, Factions, and The Star. Eric has written 7 novels, a cycle of novellas, 2 collections of short fiction, several one-act plays, and many, many essays. He has performed excerpts from his fiction and various radio essays on the program Anything Goes on WNYE-FM, a local PBS affiliate, and has also read his poetry at many Barnes & Nobles and Borders open mics. You go, as you say, from sundry day jobs, cab driver. What is an ESL teacher?
ESL is English as a second language, and that, by the way, that whole job title has changed so many times, even while I was doing it. It was ESL when I was in the Peace Corps and learning how to do it. English as a second language, ESL, very easy acronym. Then they changed it to TESOL, teaching English as a second language, because they turned it into part of a graduate school educational curriculum.
While he wrote songs and performed in a rock band, were you a long-haired rocker?
Well, I had actually kind of long hair for those times. Long hair was actually more of the 1960s and 70s, and I was more in the early 80s. The hair that was glued to look like the Empire State Building, or the mohawk look, or the shaved head look with the tattoos on the skull. I had long hair for those days, yes.
Throughout Eric's perpetual vicissitudes, I really love that sentence, that phrase. There's just something so cerebral about it. I just can't stop saying it. There has been one constant. He has been a committed writer of novels, short fiction, essays, journalism, art criticism, poetry, screenplays, and teleplays. Is there anything that you don't write about?
No, as a matter of fact, I'm probably embarrassed to say that I also added advertising to all of that, and now I write PowerPoint presentations about hospitalization and managed markets perspectives on B-cell lymphomas, and you know, I mean, I write about. I do medical writing as well.
Does this mean you've gone from being a creative to a suit?
Well, actually, no. I still have long hair. I have a ponytail. I go and I wear T-shirts and polo shirts and grungy pants. But it means that I adapted my writing to sciences and to advertising, to shorter statements, I guess you would say, because it's about decoding. It's about trying to figure out what something means. Being a liberal arts graduate, devoting myself to writing and to teaching reading and writing and to teaching literature actually helped me a lot in being able to decipher these very difficult subjects like B-cell malignancies.
Fancy four-letter stuff. I'm going to turn purple. I'm not going to know what to do.
Okay, that's cool.
How do you choose your subjects for your essays?
a little bit like an old-fashioned photographer. I just move in real places and real time, and when something presents itself to me, an idea comes to me, and then I have to write it down. And sometimes it hits me when I'm driving. I can't help myself. I start writing in my car at a stoplight just to get the idea out on paper. Much to the ire of the drivers behind me, I get a lot of honks, a lot of cursing, and so on. I just can't help myself. I have to write down an idea. I have it on paper, then I have to develop it, because every idea is just the beginning. It's a portal, a rock that on the surface just looks like any old other rock, and then you cut it, you polish it, and you find out that it's an amethyst or it's topaz or it's something that really shines. And that's a lot of what writing is. I've often said that writing is like the sculpture. You make the stone before you chisel it.
It seems as if what you go through is a new version of cerebral hemorrhage.
Well, it sometimes feels like Jung, of all people, said that creative act always follows a time of tropical depression, a time of great moodiness, of pressure building, kind of irritability. And I have to admit that happens to me a lot.
Essay style is almost fictional. I mean, aren't essays supposed to be expository pieces, informational in content, like articles in a paper or magazine? Yours like stories.
You're absolutely right about that. I am a hybrid, or in the minds of literary purists, I guess you'd call me a double agent. I write essays that sound like stories, and my stories often have essay-like passages in which I describe something in detail.
Do you have people that criticize you for the fact that your essays are a little bit different than the norm?
My criticisms as a writer probably came very early on when I was in graduate school. That was the first time when I heard the distinction made between showing and telling. And now I assume every creative writing class in the country on every level has the same dogma. Showing would be you read a story, you read a novel as if you're entering a room and you see the characters acting, talking, you see the way they look, but nothing is explained. Telling would be the writer is literally doing what you just said. He said explaining something. He's telling you what something looks like. He's telling you how something works. I would always typically blend the two.
Essays are a bit like jazz. They really aren't a popular literary form. So why did you choose to write them in the first place?
I didn't. The essays kind of happened to me because they were the only literary form I could squeeze into my 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 workday while I was working in advertising. The form actually fits the occasion. The situation called for a particular kind of writing, and that was the kind of writing that I did.
Since you write essays, who were your role models? Did you have heroes of the art form?
I did. I absolutely loved Michel de Montaigne from the first time I ever became exposed to his writing. He was the first writer to speak directly to a reader, and the subject of his writing was himself as a literary persona, his thoughts, the subject, as well as his lifestyle, his health. I mean, he even described his routine for moving his bowels. To me, that was a very liberating thing, to read a writer who was willing to, step out from the third person and talk to the reader as if he were just another person.
That's also a very, very bad pun, but we'll let that one go.
Okay. Poets are, first of all, they're more musical. Secondly, they speak in metaphors so that they don't really explain too much. The reader is called upon to read between the lines. But a writer such as Michel de Montaigne or another essayist really is out there trying to let you know him or her and what they think, which is to me what the essence of the essay is.
You're using poets to describe essayists. Would you say that there is a direct correlation?
Poetry is almost the ingredient that it is a genre and it is an art form. As a genre, poetry is very different from the essay. The modern poem, often very obscure, and it takes a lot of interpretation.
You think poems from the 50s and 60s were clearer?
I would say that you're right. Even the beat poets tried very hard to communicate. We're not always the easiest to understand. There's a lot of inside information to, let's say, what Allen Ginsberg was writing. It's become almost a hallmark of the contemporary poem to be very personal, to be very closed in. I would say the essay is quite the opposite. The essay is always out there to communicate something to an audience out there. It's always there to explain. It's always there to make something tangible.
Since you obviously have little respect for the distinctions between literary formats, what would you say are some major differences between essays and short stories?
Well, I would say the essay is all about getting somebody to think about a particular subject matter, which is very well set out. It's very well established. A story is more about telling a situation, a complete action, and of course it's presumably made up. An essay is supposed to, in any case, be something that is absolutely factual. My feeling is that those distinctions are completely adventitious. I don't see any reason why, as a quote-unquote essayist, I can't exaggerate, change the scene a little bit, something more clear or more interesting. The caterpillar story, or about my umbrellas essay. Yes, of course, I've seen forlorn, bedraggled people doused with rain walking through the streets. Have I ever seen those people give me the evil eye? And can I actually say that such people had any impact on the fate of my umbrellas? I don't think so. In the interest of making a point, I will enhance the truth.
Interesting that you say essays are much more based in fact than in fiction, but yet there is room for some poetic license.
Absolutely. In fact, that's why I believe all of these distinctions will ultimately, like the Berlin Wall, come down. I think that we're in a world where everybody has to be an improviser. Everybody has to use the tools and the skills and the talents and the inclinations they have to create something new. Back in the early part of the 20th century, that was the mantra of the modernists, the people like Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot and James Joyce and Ernest Hemingway and all of those people basically said, make it new. And all I'm saying is that in 21st century context, making it new means, hey, if you have a fact that's interesting or you have something you want to say of a more expository nature, throw it in. If you have a very funny anecdote or an interesting anecdote or a character who just jumps out and who would really help explain a situation, use that skill. I believe that we all have to practice what Claude Lévi-Strauss called bricolage. We all have to play. We have to play with our tools.
What do you like most about your job?
I like the mystery and necessity of having to create some order out of what for me at the beginning is always chaos.
What do you like least about your job?
The account executives who call me up while I'm in the middle of working on speakerphone, ask me how I'm doing and when I'm going to be finished.
Complete pain in the asses, aren't they?
Yeah, you said it. Can you think of anything more counterproductive than that?
What would you have liked to be other than your current job?
I wouldn't say I'd like to be anything else. I guess what I would like to do is more of essay writing, more of the fiction writing, creative stuff that I do when I'm not literally going into an office and working on the clock.
What job could you never do?
An account executive. If I write a mystery, it's always a little bit of a funny mystery. It's always a pastiche. I think if I were a suit, I would do something that gave me away as being somebody who isn't a suit. I would wink, or I would blow my nose, or I would cough, or I would tell a joke. I would just exhibit a subversive attitude that would automatically send off the alarm in every conference room that I occupied.
What advice would you give to authors just entering the field?
Don't believe that the door ever closes on writing, because it doesn't. Don't be discouraged. A writer doesn't lose any steps. As long as you keep it in your sights, as long as every day you're thinking about something, you're writing down a note, you're having an observation, as long as you can do those things and keep it in your sights, you can do it.
Did you ever feel like giving up? And if yes, how did you get through it?
I have felt like giving up so many times, but always as a passage of mood. Like I would feel frustrated and I go, I don't want to write anymore. Why am I doing this? What's the point? It was always like in a fit of like a tantrum. I never really walked away from it for any period of time and said, I'm not doing this anymore.
Thank you for joining us for another edition of Right on America.
Located on the internet at www.rightonamerica.us.
Join us again next time for another edition of Right on America. Once in a lifetime, the theme music for Right on America, courtesy Steve.